As spring training has kind of flown by here in Washington, D.C., I've been noticing one thing about this Nationals team when they're down in Florida. We have a strong suit that we haven't even thought about, which probably should, starting today.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as the show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, just make sure to check us out over on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it nowadays. We don't really know. So later on in the show, we're going to be getting into some MLB Players Association player union drama. If you didn't know, this kind of broke last night. There is a lot of drama going on. And I'm just telling you right now, if you're a baseball fan, this is not good for any baseball fan out there because we all know what's going to be happening within the next few years. There will likely be a lockout. Let me tell you why I think that a little bit later on in today's show. Then in the second segment, we're going to get into why the first base position is murky, to say the least. It is a very muddy situation. We don't really know what's going to happen. And really, let's be honest, it hasn't been all too impressive in spring training. So we're going to discuss that. But we're going to start off with discussing this Nationals' new strength, in my opinion, as to why this team has a new strength. We'll discuss that after I tell you guys about our sponsor of today's show. And this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. So as we've kind of gone along with spring training, one thing that I have made very clear that I think this Nationals team is very good at, I think this Nats team is good at defensively at times. You can look around and say, well, you got some spots. You have Lane Thomas in the outfield. The Nationals outfield and their depth is relatively pretty solid, even considering you have Dylan Cruz and James Wood waiting in the wings as well. Other than that, the Major League roster, not all too exciting. As we've kind of gone on, though, in this spring training, one thing that has really kind of been eye-popping, in my opinion, is this Nationals bullpen. I think going into 2024, this Nationals bullpen, while it was not good last year, I believe they were fifth worst in ERA, and you don't really look at ERA to kind of decipher what a bullpen is and what it isn't. You can look at WHIP and other things, but even then, the metrics last year were not all too good to the Nationals. I think going into this year, though, this Nationals bullpen is going to be one of the biggest, really, strength this team's have had over the last few years, since your 2021 team when they were just hitting home runs led by Kyle Schwarber. I think this team and this bullpen in particular is really setting itself up well for hopefully a good 2024 season. The reason why I think that is the Nationals, they don't really have depth in a lot of different categories. You could talk about the outfield. I think they have a lot of depth in the outfield. And they're going to be making some hard decisions as guys like Jesse Winker has been really good so far in the spring. Eddie Rosario has been pretty solid at times as well. He's going to make the opening day roster no matter what, in my opinion. Even guys like Alex Call, who at times last year proved that he could be a nice little Philly guy. As the season has gone on, though, and as the spring training has gone on, the bullpen, in my opinion, has kind of replicated what we've seen with the outfield as far as depth goes. Kind of going down the depth chart, in my opinion, quote-unquote depth chart that I've kind of put together in bullet points that I think the Nationals have done really well so far in spring training. The bullpen really takes up a big chunk of it. And the emergence of Joe LaSorsa. So far this spring, Joe LaSorsa last year, he had his time with the Nats and he was fine. At times, he had some good outings, but also at times it was really bad. It was kind of like, yeah, this is what you expect from Joe LaSorsa. So far this spring, him in particular, he has been one guy. Now, again, it is a very short, limited time. But you cannot say that you are not impressed with Joe LaSorsa, the left-handed pitcher, in which the Nationals, they need some lefty depth in the back end of that bullpen. Joe LaSorsa has put himself in a very good position to pitch some meaningful innings this year. There are even guys like Jose Ferrer, another left-handed pitcher, in which just turned 24, very young, going to be in the back end of this bullpen at some point this season once he gets past his injury. Jose Ferrer is another guy that you can kind of count on going forward. And not even to mention Kyle Finnegan, who's on the shelf right now, but he'll be back from injury hopefully anytime soon. Hunter Harvey, who you saw last night strike out the side, pumping 98, 99 miles per hour, touching 100 at times. You see this bullpen and you kind of see the emergence of, we've got some guys. And the Nationals, they went in this offseason. One of the marquee signings, which is still a little sad, is Dylan Floro, a veteran guy who's played in big postseason moments, who has pitched in those bright lights. Dylan Floro is going to be another guy in which is going to be a hot commodity. Now, this is something that I don't know if it's going against the rough here, but I've always believed in this. When you're a rebuilding team, one thing for sure that you have to stockpile up on is pitching. Maybe not it's just starting pitching, but I think it's the bullpen. And the reason why I say that is because what is the one constant every single year at the trade deadline? The good teams, the playoff teams. Think of the Dodgers. Think of the Yankees. Think of the Braves. All these teams, what are one thing that they are always looking for at the trade deadline? It's bullpen help. You can never have enough depth in that bullpen. And teams, when they need bullpen depth, they're not going to give up your top prospect. You're not going to be giving up some huge main-time big arm. But on the other hand, teams get desperate. Teams know that in October, you have to have a shutdown bullpen. You have to be able to give up your, middle tier prospect guys, whether that be a Trey Lipscomb in our system or a DJ Hers. You have to give up guys like that in order to get back into the bullpen kind of help. Now, with this Nationals team, I think they are setting themselves up for a very good trade deadline for the back end of the bullpen. Now, some people may say, well, Ryan, we could be competing in 2025. Why would you want to rip apart this bullpen? When you look around the Nats bullpen right now, not a lot of these guys, really the main guys, like Kyle Finnegan, Hunter Harvey, Dylan Floro, these guys won't be around all too long. The reason why I say that is Kyle Finnegan's already in his lower to mid-30s. Hunter Harvey's getting up there in age as well. These aren't guys who are going to be mainstays of the Nats bullpen for the next 5-10 years. It's just not going to be that way. You have to sell high. And I think this season, going into 2024 at this trade deadline, I think you're going to see the Nationals sell high on your Hunter Harvey, on your Kyle Finnegan. Maybe even a younger guy, or not a younger guy, but even a Tanner Rainey of sorts. A Joe LaSorsa, a Jordan Weems, who last year showed really flashes of brilliance at times, to say the least. Very prominent arms in this bullpen who could be moved off at the deadline to stockpile your prospect system. Now, it's not guaranteed, but you do have pieces like younger guys like a Zach Brixey, who was a 5th-round pick back in the 2020 MLB draft, if I remember correctly, coming off Tommy John surgery from this last year. He's going to be making a major league debut at some point this season. You'll have guys like Tanner Rainey, who will be coming back. He's not the youngest guy in the world still, but he's still someone that you can count on, that we've seen at times has flashes of brilliance. Jose Ferrer, in my opinion, one of the Nationals' better arms down the road. He will be a back-end arm in this bullpen. There are other guys as well. You could talk about maybe keeping Hunter Harvey at the deadline or a Jordan Weems, whatever one of those guys. But I think Kyle Finnegan and Hunter Harvey is going to be at the forefront of names that you try to push off at this deadline, and it's going to be the smart, right decision to do, because you aren't supposed to have this big, bulking bullpen here. It's not going to work out like that. You also have Mason Thompson coming back next year after having Tommy John surgery this spring training. Not to say you're going to rely on him at this point, because he has had an injury history and he has been a little bit inconsistent, but still, you can count on this. This Nationals bullpen, I think it's going to surprise some people heading into 2024. I think this Nationals bullpen may be around average to above average. Now, you may be saying, well, you just spent all this time talking up this bullpen just to say they might be average or above average. Well, when this team is projected to win 66, 67, 68 games this year, it's not that bad. You'll take your strengths where you can get them. And with the bad team, again, the reason why I like having a strong bullpen is you're going to be able to sell off a lot of these guys at the deadline and get some prospects back in return, again, to continue to stockpile the system, in which hopefully turns into guys like DJ Hurst from this last deadline. Maybe turns into Hunter Harvey's again, which you didn't trade for. You picked him up from the Orioles, but still, you get the point. You never really know what you're going to be getting until you walk into that door with all these different prospects. You got to continue to stockpile. You got to continue to add depth, and that is what the great organizations do that separate themselves from the pack. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. Catch us over on Twitter and as well as on YouTube. Just search Locked On Nationals there for your latest news and notes. Next, Nats first base position. It's a little bit muddy. There is one intriguing character, but there's two Joeys not looking all too great right now. We'll discuss that after I tell you guys about our good friends over at PrizePicks. And guys, football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up, whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court. There's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. And of course, do you want to play alongside some of the PrizePicks favorite players like Meek Mill and Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePick community each week. Guys, you will not want to miss this because there are a ton of different things. Like my personal favorite, you have player and stat types that you're selecting, highlight your winnings from PrizePicks, and how fun and simple the experience of playing the game. It's just so much fun. And of course, what you have to do is you have to download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And of course, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. You won't want to miss it again. That is code LOCKEDONMLB. As we kind of move on here with the Nationals, I think one thing in particular with this first base group is it's going to be an intriguing yet infuriating, wild ride experience this year. The reason why I say that is because, number one, we have Joey Gallo. You heard from him on the show yesterday. If you missed that, he is in segment 3. I had a little interview from West Palm Beach. You will not want to miss that. Go back and check it out. Use the whatever app you're listening to over on YouTube, over on the Odyssey app, whatever it may be. Just go back to yesterday's episode on March 18th. That is where you'll find that Joey Gallo interview. But this position group is looking very muddy at this point in time. Joey Meneses, while I kind of called him out the other day for really not doing all too much, and really the Joeys in particular, because the Joeys are going to be the ones who provide power for this team. Lane Thomas is going to be in that conversation as well after hitting north of 20 home runs last year. C.J. Abrams, stunningly, is going to be in that conversation as well as far as this team goes to provide some power. Nick Senzel, if he can heat up at some point this season. Other guys as well. But one thing is, first base could be an issue for this Nationals team. Maybe not defensively, because Joey Gallo is going to be over there first base at full time to start out the season. Now, what will be the plan down the road? Because if we're being honest, the Nationals, they plan to trade Joey Gallo if he has some sort of success here. Now, the only issue with that, he has not had success so far in spring training. It's not good. This has not been good so far in spring training. So far, you're sitting at March 19th. He doesn't have a home run this year. He has not really been hitting for power. You have not really seen the plate discipline at times in which he hasn't really shown throughout his career, but still, he just seems to be all over the map at this point in 2024. So what gives? He's 3 for 31, 0 home runs this spring, Last night, he put the ball in play a few times, but still, you kind of see as to why this Nationals team may have their doubts over at first base. And on the other hand, with your backup at this point, Joey Meneses, his bat may be better at this point in time in Joey's career. But one thing is for sure is he is not even close to the defensive first baseman that Joey Gallo is. Joey Meneses, in my opinion, should not be touching first base. Not when you have a young infield with CJ Abrams over at shortstop. Because until this Nationals team can kind of get it together with the pitching staff, you need to have a good defense in order to have some sort of success this season. I always believed that last year, Dominic Smith, while it was tough to watch him at the plate, his defense saved the Nationals a ton over time. He did. Imagine all the times that CJ Abrams bounced the ball over to first base. The times that Luis Garcia bounced the ball over to first base. Jeimer Candelario, Carter Kieboom in the second half of the season. Dominic Smith was a stalwart over there. He was someone that you can rely on. And I do think that he not only helped the pitching staff, but he also helped us win games in that category. And I think that is why he was a little bit undervalued by this team, even though we made the right decision moving on from him. But still, you understand the point. He helped this team defensively a boatload. So now you kind of have, again, the same issue as last year. You have someone like Joey Gallo who will hit for more power than Dominic Smith. There's no doubt about that. He's not going to be as defensively sharp as him, but still, he ain't going to be as bad as Joey Meneses. So when Joey Meneses, on the other hand, he may be a little bit better offensively than Joey Gallo at this point in his career, but he is nowhere near the defender that Joey Gallo is. And it's not because Joey Gallo is some beast over at first base. It's because Joey Meneses isn't that good at first base. So we're in a little bit of a pickle here. Let me tell you, though, there is one guy in this farm system, which not really in the farm system, but he's likely going to start out the year in the minor leagues. His name, Juan Yepez. Juan Yepez is a guy who may not be known by too many, but if you look back into the Cardinals system, if you look back in the Cardinals just a few years ago, this is a right-handed hitter, power hitter, in fact, who hit a home run in a postseason game. A big one, too. You look back at his career power numbers in AAA and in AA, big-time power and big-time home runs. Kind of reminds me of the Nationals signing Stone Garrett from 2 years ago. Everyone was kind of like, who is this Stone Garrett guy? But then you look at the numbers, you're like, oh. And you look at the body build of this guy, you're like, this guy's huge. He has some potential. And as we saw last year, Stone Garrett, in the limited time that he played, was very good, was very impressive. I think Juan Yepez is going to be the winner of the Stone Garrett Award this year. I think he's going to be that guy who comes up out of nowhere, and you're going to be like, who is this guy? How much power does he have? He has 6 home runs in the middle of May. What are we doing? He's playing solid defense over at the corner. Who is this guy? I think that's going to be this year's surprise. Now, again, you're going to see a lot of different play over at first base. You're going to see Joey Gallo start there opening day, who will be your opening day first baseman, point blank. Joey Meneses at times. When Joey Gallo's out at first, you're going to see Joey Meneses play first. It's going to be a flip-flop of the Joeys. And then at some point in time, if the Joeys, which at this point probably won't be getting the job done all too well, I think you're going to see Juan Yepez. Or as soon as there is an injury over at first, you will see Juan Yepez. Juan Yepez is not someone who's going to be some world beater. He's not going to be someone to save your franchise. The one thing is for sure is the guy can hit, and he can hit for power. I think moving forward, now again, while it is kind of a muddy scenario and it is kind of a muddy situation with guys like Joey Meneses, who you would like to see a little bit more from, but at this point, you can't really rely on him being ultra consistent, being in his lower to mid 30s. Joey Gallo goes the same way. You can't really rely on him being this ultra competitive, super just great guy going forward to rely on over at first base. I'm not saying Juan Yepez is going to be that guy, but he has by far and away been the more impressive hitter and as well as first baseman over Joey Gallo and Joey Meneses this spring training. It's going to be a tough competition because, again, you signed Joey Gallo to a pretty decent-sized contract, and you also have your teeth wrapped up with Joey Meneses. We'll see what the Nationals decide to do, but I'm telling you right now, Juan Yepez is someone to keep an eye on moving forward in 2024. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen. Next, let's talk to you about this MLB PA drama, as in my opinion, it could lead to another lockout, which is not good. Not this year, but sometime soon. I'll tell you why I think that after I tell you guys about our good friends over at Amazon Fire TV. And Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as a Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro league and college references as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.com/LockedOnFireTV. And now, let me tell you guys about our really good friends over at FanDuel. And guys, it is here. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. That's right. You cannot have your bracket busted, because you can keep on going with our friends at FanDuel. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on some point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Like maybe you think Purdue, after last year, they were ousted in the first round. Maybe you think this is the revenge year and they get the national championship. You can do that with FanDuel, but when you do that, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Again, that is FanDuel.com/LockedOn, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the net. Again, that is FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Now let's get back into it, as the MLBPA and the players, they are in a battle. Last night, The Athletic broke the story that the MLBPA is going to be looking to quote unquote kind of oust their second guy, and which is replace him with Harry Marino. You may be kind of a little bit eerie about what all this means. What is the big deal of this? Well, in summary, in my opinion, the reason why the players are kind of going after the MLBPA and their leadership, and Tony Clark in particular, while he's the main guy, they're going for the second guy up. I would not be surprised at this point with Bruce Meyer, who is the second guy in the MLBPA. The reason why the players are going after this is strictly because of what Scott Boras has done. And this is kind of my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, you could say. And this has been thrown around to say also. Scott Boras is kind of tied in with the MLBPA. I'm not saying that he has been that kind of guy who's tied into the Players Association, who's going to be looking out for the best with players. But one thing in particular has kind of stood out to me in this. A lot of drawn comparisons from Bruce Meyer all the way to Scott Boras, in which may kind of influence players to part with Scott Boras, sign with him in order to, help Scott Boras' checkbook. I'm not saying that's true, but I think there are some connections in which some really smart baseball people have been kind of to connect the dots. That's not really what I think this whole issue is about, but I think the tip of the iceberg will show you this. Scott Boras is one of the biggest losers of this offseason. Yeah, he is. The reason why that is, you saw what Blake Snell got. 2 years, just a handful of $1 million, about $62 million from the San Francisco Giants. You saw Matt Chapman, another premier free agent, got a few-year deal. Cody Bellinger, everyone's talking about $250 million, $200 million plus, $60 million with an opt-out. Something is wrong. Something is not right here. Maybe it is kind of a little owner's collusion. Maybe it is agents. Maybe it just simple is owners and GMs don't really think that highly of these Boras clients. But one thing is for sure, is when there is turmoil amongst the MLB Players Association, in which has been represented relatively well by Tony Clark over the years. But when there is issues, it's bad. And the players going after the MLBPA is really bad. Because once this new CBA runs out of time in the next few seasons, there will be a lockout. That's the way it kind of feels like right now. We love baseball. You don't want to see a lockout. You don't want to see games canceled. It's not good for business. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for baseball fans in particular. But right now, there is a lot of drama. And, I mean, it's going to be a show over the next few years. And to see this new CBA and whatever happens with it, we'll see what MLBPA decides to do and what the players really ultimately decide to do, as players are not happy. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day. Check us out over on YouTube. Search Locked On Nationals there. That is where you'll find us for all your latest Nationals news and notes. Make sure to check us out over on YouTube. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Enjoy the day.